The sunlight pouring through the stained glass windows painted the church floor with brilliant shades of gold and crimson, but none of that beauty could soften the sound of a bride quietly breaking apart. Emily Carter stood frozen at the altar, her trembling hands clutching the phone that had destroyed her world only seconds earlier. Tears streamed down her cheeks as hundreds of guests watched in stunned silence. A single text glowed across the screen. "I'm sorry. I can't do this. Don't look for me." The groom had vanished. Every carefully planned dream, every promise whispered beneath the stars, every hope for forever collapsed inside one heartbeat. Have you ever watched someone's entire future disappear in a single moment? What would you do if you stood where Emily stood now, with everyone staring while your heart shattered? The minister lowered his head, unsure whether to continue speaking. Guests whispered behind folded hands. Some looked away, embarrassed by her pain. Others quietly recorded the scene on their phones. Emily wished the marble floor would open beneath her feet. Her father had passed away years earlier. Her mother sat in the front pew, crying helplessly. There was nobody strong enough to shield Emily from the humiliation swallowing the sanctuary. Then something unexpected happened. Near the back of the church stood Daniel Brooks, a quiet single father who had attended only because his cousin worked for the wedding planner. Beside him stood his 7-year-old daughter Lily, holding a tiny basket of white flowers. Daniel had lost his wife to cancer 4 years earlier. Since then, every day had become a balancing act between construction jobs, bedtime stories, school lunches, unpaid bills, and trying to convince Lily that happiness still existed somewhere. Lily tugged gently on his sleeve. "Daddy, why is that lady crying?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Because someone forgot how precious another person's heart is." The words echoed inside him. Emily tried to walk away, but her legs refused to move. Every eye remained fixed on her. The silence became unbearable. Lily suddenly slipped her tiny hand from Daniel's and walked toward the altar before anyone could stop her. She stood beside Emily and silently offered her the small bouquet she had been carrying. "It's okay," Lily whispered. "My mommy says people who cry deserve flowers the most." Emily collapsed onto her knees and hugged the little girl, sobbing even harder. The entire church fell silent. Daniel slowly walked forward, unsure why his feet refused to stop. "I'm sorry," he told the minister. "I know this isn't my place." Emily looked up through tear-filled eyes. Daniel hesitated before speaking again. "I can't erase what happened today." His voice shook. "But nobody deserves to leave this church believing they're unworthy of love." People stared without breathing. Daniel glanced toward Lily, who smiled innocently. Then he looked back at Emily. "If walking out alone today is what hurts most." He took one careful step closer. "Then let me stand beside you." Emily blinked in confusion. Daniel continued quietly. "I'm not asking for romance. I'm not asking for forever. I'm simply asking if you'd allow one stranger to protect your dignity." The room became impossibly still. "What are you saying?" Emily whispered. Daniel took a slow breath. "I'm saying, if you want, I'll marry you." Gasps filled every corner of the cathedral. Emily covered her mouth. Daniel quickly raised both hands. "Not because of pity. Not because this is some fairy tale. But because nobody should remember today as the day they were abandoned. If you choose to say no, I'll quietly walk back to my seat. No pressure. No expectations. I just couldn't keep watching someone suffer alone." Have you ever witnessed kindness arrive when nobody expected it? Emily looked into Daniel's tired eyes. They weren't filled with excitement. They were filled with understanding. She recognized the same loneliness she carried inside herself. Lily gently squeezed Emily's hand. "My daddy always keeps his promises." Emily cried even harder. For the first time since reading that terrible message. She smiled. Emily wiped away her tears, but her hands were still trembling. Every person inside the cathedral waited for her answer. The silence stretched so long that even the choir members seemed afraid to breathe. Daniel never moved closer. He simply stood there, giving her the freedom to decide. Have you ever met someone who expected nothing from you except honesty? What would you do if hope suddenly appeared in the middle of your darkest hour? Emily looked at the empty doorway where her groom should have been. Then she looked at Daniel and little Lily. "I don't even know you," she whispered. Daniel smiled gently. "Then let's start with our names." A soft wave of laughter rolled through the church, breaking the crushing tension. "My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm Emily Carter. It's nice to meet you, Emily." Despite everything, she laughed through her tears. The minister stepped forward carefully. Marriage is a sacred promise. It shouldn't be made because of embarrassment. Daniel nodded immediately. I agree. He turned toward Emily. If this feels wrong, we'll simply walk out together so nobody has to leave alone. That's enough. Emily stared at him for several seconds. Then she asked the question nobody expected. Would you still respect me tomorrow if I said no today? Daniel answered without hesitation. Tomorrow, next year, or 20 years from now. Those words reached the deepest part of her wounded heart. Slowly, she placed her shaking hand into his. I don't know what tomorrow holds. But today, ... I'd rather walk beside someone honest than cry because of someone who lied. The church erupted into emotional applause. Guests who had entered expecting a wedding now witnessed something far greater, the birth of compassion. The minister smiled warmly. I've never seen a beginning quite like this. The ceremony became simple. No expensive speeches. No rehearsed romance. Just two broken adults choosing courage over humiliation. Months passed. Their marriage didn't begin with fireworks. It began with conversations over coffee, bedtime stories with Lily, quiet walks through neighborhood parks, and learning each other's scars. Daniel never tried to replace the memories Emily carried. Emily never tried to erase the love Daniel still held for his late wife. Instead, they built something entirely new. One evening Lily climbed onto the couch between them. Can I tell you a secret? Daniel smiled. Always. I prayed that Mommy would send someone nice for Daddy. She wrapped her tiny arms around Emily. I think she did. Emily burst into tears as Lily hugged her tighter. Years later, Daniel and Emily returned to that same cathedral for a charity fundraiser supporting abandoned brides, grieving families, and single parents rebuilding their lives. A young woman approached Emily afterward. I almost gave up after my fiancé left me, she admitted. Then I heard your story. Emily squeezed her hands. You were never someone's rejection. You were still someone's future. Daniel stood beside her, proud but quiet, exactly as he had been on the day they met. As they prepared to leave, Lily, now a confident teenager, looked back at the altar where everything had changed. Funny, she whispered. What is? Daniel asked. Everyone thought a wedding was ruined here. She smiled at Emily. But this is where our family actually began. Daniel wrapped one arm around his wife while Emily held Lily close. Sunlight once again poured through the stained glass windows, filling the cathedral with warm colors, just as it had years before. Only now, nobody stood there crying alone. Sometimes life doesn't rescue us by restoring the plans we lost. Sometimes it places a stranger in our path whose kindness quietly becomes the miracle we never imagined. And in a world that often celebrates perfect love stories, their family became living proof that the strongest relationships are not always born from perfect beginnings, but from ordinary people who choose compassion when someone else needs it most.